All right. Give everyone a few minutes here to log on. All right, we'll kick it off here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MediaJel podcast. I'm your host, Guillermo Bravo. Thank you for joining us today as we discuss how to manage the customer experience before, during, and after visit with Krista Raymer of the Vetrina Group. MediaJel connects. Yeah, of course. MediaJel connects brands and retailers with cannabis consumers through our ad network of mainstream publishers, mobile apps, games, and TV. We help cannabis companies advertise on Google, support in SEO, and activate data with display advertising to support e-commerce sales. I'd like to introduce Krista Raymer, a Cannabis Retail Strategist, with us today. Hi, Krista.
Hi.
Krista is an innovative, passionate business owner who drives top-line growth and profitability through unique business modeling within the cannabis retail space. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk about customer journeys.
Likewise. Well, let's kick it off there. Can you give us a little background on your career and how you entered the cannabis space?
Yeah, so I actually got involved in cannabis kind of by accident. We had started Vetrina Group as a retail team ready to get started with digitally native companies, open up brick and mortar stores. And while that happened, rec stores in Canada opened up, and we went into the stores and there was a ton of opportunity in the way that the retail experience was going down for customers. We said, we can help fix this. So we got started with some first round lottery winners, and now we work with cannabis retailers and brands, both in Canada as well as in the US.
Awesome. And we know customer expectations are at an all-time high and they're only growing, right? So, what can business owners do to create an unforgettable cannabis dispensary customer experience?
Yeah, I think we first kind of need to think about and rationalize, what does the actual visits of a cannabis store look like? Mm-hmm. For the most part, if we were to talk to retail store owners or even managers, they'll say our customers shop with us once a week. In the data, when we start to dig in around the frequency to which people are purchasing in cannabis stores, Headset notes that it's actually closer on average to about 8 times a year. So the average customer is shopping 8 times a year, as opposed to that weekly occurrence. Okay. So when we think about building our business or driving a more profitable environment, we need to drive the business in a couple different ways. We can either 1, acquire new customers, 2, increase the number of visits that our current customers are doing, or 3, increase the sales while the customer is in the store already purchasing. And so if we want to think about creating unforgettable experiences, it's really about this retention game. So it's about thinking about, instead of doing 8 transactions in a year, how can we get our most engaged customers to be shopping 9, 10, 11, 12 times a year? And so to create an unforgettable customer experience in a cannabis store, we need to create feelings of comfort and trust, and that they also feel recognized for their participation in the retail environment. So really it's about, how are we developing relationships with our budtenders? How is the customer feeling about their transaction after they've completed it? And then how are we making sure that we're retaining the customers that are shopping with us?
Yeah, and these are all key, and we're going to dive in deeper to each of these line items, shortly here. But it's, all of those are key really for growing your revenue and your, just growing your dispensary as a whole. So we're going to be diving into strategies to actually influence each of these channels. And you got to remember that humans are social beings, right? So even with the success of online ordering and leftover fear of the pandemic, cannabis lovers will happily drive to a retail store if they enjoy the in-store customer experience. So, what can businesses glean from customers that are willing to walk into a retail store to purchase instead of using delivery? And, how can they use that information to maintain a loyal customer base?
Well, I think there's 2 points that I would not necessarily totally differentiate the in-store versus the online customer. In other traditional retail, like it's pretty fluid in terms of going back and forth. Anytime somebody feels like they want more additional information, that's usually when we see them visit a store. So those customers that are less familiar with products, or maybe are going to try a new product or product format, are going to be more willing to come to the store. So before they've even entered the store, they've probably done some kind of exploration about who you are or what you're offering. So your online presence is going to be probably one of the first touch points, whether that be through your actual website or complementary websites like Weed Maps or something like that. Yep. Then it is going to be about whether when they get to the store, their expectations are met. So this is like a really important feature about shopping in store that most people don't think about, is that when the customer is coming to the store, they already have expectations about how this is going to go. So it's up to the store and the bud tenders to start to uncover what those expectations might be, and then how we can make that magic happen where the customer feels so great while they're shopping in store. And it's really when they feel like their expectations are met and that they are confident in their decisions. So when we think about like where the customer is coming from in terms of physical location or what they're doing, we're really starting to shift and go away from only thinking about the demographics, meaning like who is our customer, not just age and gender, but more so going like, what are the patterns and consistency in terms of like activities that our customer has in common. So are they coming to us on their way home from work? Or do they stop in the store for fun on their way out to meet friends? Do they have a dog? And do they bring the dog to the store because they're out for a walk? All of these are going to give us some ethnographic hints about who our customer is, and then tell us a lot more about what the purchasing behavior might be. So like, let's give an example of that. If a customer is driving in their car and they're on their way home from work and they stop in the store, they're probably going to be more willing to purchase something that isn't as transportable, meaning like concentrates or like a dab rig might be in the carts. Whereas if you're in a location where your customer is usually walking in and they might be in transit to somewhere else, like a public park or the beach, we're going to want to think about a product that is easier to move around and probably a little bit more discreet. And so it's going to influence the way that the products and what purchases are happening and when. So in the second example, we might see things like vapes or edibles and pre-rolls sell at a higher cadence than kind of like the industry average, mainly because we're thinking about the way that our customers utilizing the product and in what path in their journey they're getting there.
Wow, those are all great points. And I'm just thinking of, the highest traffic times of the dispensaries as well. So, after work, people maybe stop off there for happy hour, like they'll come pick up some pre-rolls or something on the way home from work. I know like Thursday evening through Sunday evening is typically like high traffic within stores. So keeping that in mind, that people want to stop by your store on the way out with friends, like that could be a big segment for you. And I know you had some great case studies around having a dispensary around a dog park as well. So if that is your customer base, really curating your product catalog to speak to that audience, and then having I remember there was a pre-roll that was made for that specific category. It's called dog walkers.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. So really speaking to your customers on that front is key.
Yeah. Anytime something feels like it belongs in your life, it's going to feel more familiar. So like you kind of said with human behavior, people love things that are recognizable and feel like they already know them. So if we can get those pieces of product to align with their life, we're much more likely to create confidence in the purchasing decision, as well as see repurchasing rates increase with those specific products. That's why things with color or food names tend to sell faster and better in stores. It's because they already have this like common experience with the customer who's shopping in store. Flavor profiles vary and what sells through by trend, like market to market. Something that might sell really well in Canada doesn't sell in California, and something that sells in California in January probably doesn't sell in Michigan in January, because the mindset of the customer is totally different. And so those are the ethnographic behaviors that we need to think about with our customers when they're making decisions about what product to purchase.
Yeah. And understanding the market that you're operating in is crucial for setting up a successful dispensary. So, for each state you operate in, you should be considering not only your total addressable market and analyzing their demographics and preferences to attract new customers and build loyalty, but also exploring the cannabis data and reporting out there for your state's product preferences. So like, what are some of your favorite platforms that you use for gathering market intelligence and cannabis data?
Yeah, I think like it's really important to differentiate and first understand what the value of the data is, right? So if we take market level insights, that's going to tell us something about like the entire market, but that isn't necessarily going to tell us everything about our individual market. So POS data is always my favorite. Because that's going to be exactly what is happening in our physical environments. The pesty thing about POS data, though, is that it doesn't tell you what the opportunity was. It only tells you what could have been or what was, because what was in store. So we can't get sell-through data on a SKU if we never had the SKU or the product in store in the first place to buy. So like, we've got to take POS data with a grain of salt. This is where insights become really important, or like market level data. And so I love Headset for that kind of tool, to be able to take a look and understand, okay, what are the trends in the market? And then we test that both in terms of conception and strategy for a retail environment, and then also maybe in execution too, to say, hey, does that trend actually play out in my retail environment too? Maybe there is a massive trend around concentrates, and like concentrates as a category growing in your local state. Then we want to take into consideration, say, does that apply to my specific customer base? And does my store support that? Both of those things are going to define whether we like actually go down and invest in that category like that, or if we're going to say, you know what, not for me. The thing is also there's really interesting like market insights that we can pull from non-cannabis data as well. And so being aware of like what trends are happening in terms of consumer behavior becomes really important as well. So are we shopping online? What are the trends around shopping online? Is there anything that we can do from a merchandising perspective to support these? All become really helpful when thinking about what the additional tools are that we're going to use to really build out our like intelligence around our cannabis data.
No, that's all helpful insights. And, these all, it's great that you can gather data and everything, right? On the point of sale side, but what data should you actually be tracking? And then how can you activate that data?
Yeah, I think like the first thing is we want to understand our quality of sale data. Yep. So we've got a bit of a framework that we understand retail environments by. First section is like quality of sale, meaning average per basket, number of units, what types of products are being purchased most frequently together. This is going to tell you a lot about kind of just like what's our current state. Yep. Then we take a look at inventory, then we took a look at people, and then we take a look at marketing as efforts. So to really understand where we're going with a marketing strategy, we need to be aware of what our quality of sale and what our inventory is looking like. There's nothing worse than running some type of promotion and not being prepared from an inventory perspective. So your marketing strategies are going to be defined a little bit by like what is happening in terms of your quality of sale and what do we want to improve? Is it that we are trying to improve our units per transaction, or is it that we're trying to add new customers to the environment? That will start to build out the strategy of being like, where do we go and what do we do with this? Because if we are communicating with our customer base that is already in existence, then that's going to be a different message than if we are going down the path of trying to gain new customers that might not already be in our database. So quality of sale and understanding kind of like what our goals are going to be the first step to start to build out that marketing strategy.
That's very helpful. And, that's another part of this is really looking at product offering, right? So like what can retailers do to pinpoint different product gaps? And do you have any tips for selecting a good product assortment for the retail storefront?
Yeah, I think like this is where market level insights become really interesting, is we want to look at trends in terms of by category and then dial it back and look at our own trends in our retail environment and say, do we think that we could hit that if the market is outperforming our location by category, or are we overperforming for a particular reason? So any kind of variances from the market average, we want to make a note of and understand kind of first why. What's really interesting is that the Pareto principle has a tendency to play out in cannabis as well. So the Pareto principle is that 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers. In cannabis, this plays out pretty true, but more like a 70-30 split. And when we specifically look at inventory, it's like 30% of your SKUs generate 70% of your revenue. So all of a sudden, that's giving us a pretty narrow and tight window to be really dialed in. So from an assortment strategy, we want to think about like how many SKUs are we carrying to begin with? And then which ones are we actually generating the majority of our revenue from? Then we're going to take a look at it and say, what are the middle performing SKUs? Is there anything in there that has an opportunity to perform better? Or is there something in there that maybe like it was a trend and we're starting to lose it? So it was like really trendy product, it kind of hit a blip and now its sell-through is dropping off. And then we want to take a look at what our bottom performers are. So anything that has been in store for more than 60 days with no sales, we need to get out like immediately. And why we need to do that is because you have cash flow locked up in that SKU and you've probably already lost your ability to make any kind of gross margin on it because the operational costs we've put into maintaining it. So now it's about being able to turn it around and reinvest in one of those top performing SKUs. So instead of kind of being like reactive and responding to what is happening, we want to be a little more predictive. And to be predictive, we need to be thinking about test and iteration, bringing things in a smaller quantity, and then really tracking it over 30 days in terms of how it's performing. So when a SKU enters the store, where does it show up in terms of your online menu presence? Where does it show up in terms of your in-store menu presence from a merchandising perspective? How does our team talk about this product? And then are we running any promotions around this product? Are all going to help us assess whether it's something that works for our store or not. If it doesn't work, mark it down, get it out, reinvest in something else. If it does work, what is the amount that we need to reinvest to be able to amplify those results? So thinking about gaps in the assortment really comes down to identifying what your top performing SKUs are and your middle, comparing and contrasting that kind of to like industry averages around categories and identifying if you have anything that like sits outside of the industry average and testing and seeing how much more you can push that. So if beverages outperforming your location, how many beverages do we need in store to be able to continue to see that category grow? Or like, what's the total number of SKUs for our customers to be able to make decisions? What we all forget is that if a product completely sells out, we've missed the opportunity. So in retail, like selling out is some of the worst things that can happen. We want to make sure that we have the inventory in store to sell without being over inventory and it becoming a slow moving SKU.
Oh, that was a lot. I mean, a lot of great insights.
A lot of information.
Yeah, this is very helpful. And like, how do you, as a retailer, like depending on which state, I don't know how many SKUs are at the retailer storefront in Canada, but I know like in Washington State and California, they can have upwards of 500 SKUs. So, I guess going through this whole exercise that you highlighted is, of those SKUs, what 30% should you really be focusing on? And what can you do as a retailer to, help amplify and reinvest in those top brands so that you can push those through as well. And then, a lot of these products that sit on the shelves are just, they're not selling through. Like, how do you deprioritize that, get them out of the store And then, how do you note that as far as on the purchasing behavior to not to reorder? And then also, you said, you never want to sell out of anything, especially if it is a part of that 30% of your top products. So how do you, like on your side as a retailer, like how do you actually automate that whole process? Like do the brands get automatic notifications when you're running low on product? Like how does that work, Krista?
Yeah, it depends on the POS.
Okay.
There are other tools also that will help you better analyze your inventory, like Headset and their retailer platform, which is like a plugin that allows you to better understand your actual POS data, not just the market level insights. What we're really looking at is the velocity. So what you're talking about in terms of understanding how quickly a product is selling is a measurement of how quickly a product sells over a period of time. I love to look at velocity in terms of on a day-to-day perspective. So do we sell 1 unit, 2 units, 5 units a day? That's going to help us better understand what our run rate is. Then we need to take into consideration what our repurchasing timeline is. So if our delivery period is like a 2-week window, then we really need to be initiating reordering on that specific SKU just before 2 weeks so that we don't sell out. So we need to think about what the buffer is in terms of how many days of inventory do we need on hand as a buffer. Selling through, like making sure that we're still doing first in, first out so that we don't have aged inventory in store, but then initiating orders early enough to allow for the timeline for them to come in. And that's where managing an inventory when you have 500 SKUs becomes so hard, is because you have so many different vendors that might all be operating on different timelines. And so because of that, we need to be dialed in and think about how much inventory do we really need to be able to support the sales? And this is where understanding what percentage of SKUs generate what percentage of revenue becomes a really helpful tool, because most retailers will say, you know what, I need 500 SKUs to generate the revenue that I'm doing. And I would be like, do you? Like if we look at the sell through by SKU, it very often is surprising data around like what is actually our top performing products. And then like, I'm going to throw a wrench in all of this and say, sometimes it's not only revenue that generates what is our top performing SKU. We also need to take into consideration like the number of units that sell through. So you might have a concentrate product, because of the price point of concentrates, it generates a certain amount of revenue that might translate to, let's call it 100 units a week, and it generates a certain amount of revenue. Whereas maybe a pre-roll, we've got it priced at like $3 or $4 and it's generating significantly less or like slightly less revenue, but from a units per over the week, it's much higher. So we've actually impacted way more customers with the pre-roll than we have with the concentrates. And this is why it becomes really important to like analyze the inventory to understand where the revenue is coming and how impactful different SKUs are.
100%. And really that impactful part of that is the most important, right? Is like how impactful is that SKU or product category or brand on the business as a whole. I know that in the past, like some of our retail partners, we have maybe like a more affordable product that is really a loss leader, but we know that, we're not going to make money on that SKU, but we know that they're, the upsell or the add-ons is what we're really doing to expand the total, I guess the average order value for that order. So there's different strategies that you can implement in the play, just based on the compliance within your region and then how competitive people are in your city.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's known that a customer needs to see you a minimum of 7 times before they make a purchase. How can you get in front of the customers before they visit your store to get those 7 touches in?
Well, I would turn that also back to you guys, because I feel like you are really great at this kind of thing, but it's like, it's really for us, it's starting to think about where our customer is looking. So when they are making a decision about like that they want to purchase cannabis, where do they go first? And so Then we think about the decision tree is, are they looking for a specific product, which might lead them to certain search results, or are they looking for like a location, which might lead them down other results? That is a kind of like maybe the first step. I would love to know what you also think of that when we're thinking about online first.
Yeah. So, I mean, the no-brainers is going to be your website. So your website's going to be really the foundation of your overall online presence. So making sure that you have that set up, and then you have analytics installed on that, and they're really focusing on either if you're a retail store driving e-commerce sales to the menu, or if you're a brand, sending people through to where your product is available. Social media is a no-brainer. That's there's a lot of cannabis consumers on Instagram, on Facebook. I would say LinkedIn is more for the B2B audiences. So really focusing on Instagram, I would say is the best for a brand. Let's look at the marketplaces. So whether, depending on your region, you can focus on like Weed Maps or Leafly. Yelp is another one to really capture people through the marketplaces. We always focus on search engines. 70% of cannabis or website visitors to like a cannabis website are coming from Google. So SEO is going to be huge on that. That's going to be, really building your presence around people looking for a location, as you said, Krista. So if someone's looking for a cannabis store in their area, you want to rank for those terms. If they're looking for a specific product, depending on your e-commerce menu, you can you can have those product pages indexed by search engines, or if you don't, you can just create landing pages for those different brands and products that sell well. And then paid search, like if you don't have the time to wait for the SEO to really pick up, then you can invest in Google ads or Bing ads to really jump ahead to the front of the line to get that sale. So, as you build your brand trust and authority, with potential customers, they'll start to see your brand and consider a purchase. And, the pre-sale for your business should focus on, like I said, like building social media presence, creating SEO keyword focused educational content, building your brand and website, and then investing in paid search marketing campaigns to capture search intent, and then using display ads for brand awareness in the top of funnel. So there's a lot of ways that you can really connect with cannabis consumers through digital marketing. So you want to create, multiple touch points using those different 4 strategies, and then continuing to build your marketing plan and scale your budget as revenue grows. So if you haven't opened your doors yet, then you should focus on really set up. So, on the marketing side, get your website set up, get your menu set up, start to build those evergreen SEO focused educational content. Get your CRM set up, whether it's like an Alpine IQ or Spring Big or some of the other platforms, so that people can sign up for your email newsletter or loyalty program or text message list. So you really want to start collecting that first party data. And on the social media side, you can do that before you enter a store. You really just want to build up your following, but really be cautious with social media, because you don't want to promote the sale or use of the product, because that's going to get you flagged and your account potentially shut down. So you really want to kind of proceed with caution when using social media. So there's a lot of different ways that you can really capture cannabis consumers when you're in that customer acquisition phase. And a couple numbers I want to highlight is I think it's about 75% plus of all website visitors are going to be on their mobile device. So making sure that your website and all your assets are really built for mobile first, because that's what people expect in their customer experience. Like everyone has their phone in their pocket. It's an extension of yourself. So making sure that people can find you when using their cell phone, get to the checkout of your shopping cart in as minimal clicks as possible, and just make that whole process easy. Because that's, with COVID and everything that occurred the last 2 years, the customers' expectations are really high. and they expect, this really easy to use experience digitally, and then the checkout in store should be kind of follow that same format. So they should be able to get in the store quick if they've pre-ordered and get out of there fairly quickly as well. Or if they want to spend some time to speak with the bud tenders, like they should be well educated and ready to answer their questions. So, the expectations of the consumers is very high now.
Yeah, like, I mean, you've identified kind of two things that really stand out for me on the website perspective, is that it's like, we have a path with our customer coming into the website, and are they going to make a purchase while they're on the site? And so if they're going to make a purchase while they're on the site, you're like reducing the number of clicks, and thinking about how easy it is to digest information becomes important. So people don't like too many options, specifically when online shopping. They think they want all the options, but when we're presented with too many, we can't make a decision, and then we're not confident about the decision that we've made. So sometimes it's about also thinking about how we pare back our online menu to be able to drive additional sales through our website. And then if a customer is also on your website to learn about you, and then is going to be coming to your space, thinking about how easy it is to find what your address is and how quickly that links out to like something like a Google Maps, and being able to identify and track that behavior through the analytics on the back end helps us to better understand kind of like what our path to purchase is. And so with the 7 touch points, it's like, are we building an online presence and being able to connect with them? But then also, like, the most basic touch point usually is your signage and your physical location. Most customers are purchasing in the US are purchasing at a store within 3 miles of their home or their workplace. And so because of that, like, your physical presence and your touch point about somebody driving by or walking by every day becomes really helpful. We all have been there where we like drive by a million McDonald's over the span of 2 days. And then all of a sudden you're thinking about your order for McDonald's. And if you want McDonald's, it is because it has consistently shown up and popped up in your life. And so we want to be able to think about how we can create that. McDonald's does it by making sure that they have strong signage that's like evident from the highway, even when it's like a mile away. And so we want to think about what kind of behavior we can create by just having physical presence with a touch point as well.
Yeah, and that 3 miles from the storefront really, that stands out to me. Like, it's really hyper local. And if that's going to be your audience, and what was the percentage of stores that you said that are focused on that 3 mile storefront?
Oh, I did. I'm not sure how many are actually focused on this 3 mile perspective, but like, that's usually where the majority of the revenue is going to come from. And so probably to go back to that Pareto principle, 70-30 split for cannabis. But when we are thinking about being that close, it's like, how do we service and really understand the needs of those customers, and what are those touch points going to be?
Yeah, and when I'm thinking about the 3 miles, like, anyone who walks in that 3 mile radius of your store is going to be a highly qualified, I would say, cannabis consumer, right? You really want to get in front of them. So just some digital marketing tactics that may work for you, that we know of, work for these hyper local campaigns, is going to be your display advertising campaign, or programmatic advertising. So you can draw a 3 mile radius around your store of anyone that we know is a cannabis consumer that has walked into another cannabis dispensary in the past, or made a purchase through another store over the last 6 months. If they walk within this 3 mile radius of your store, you want to make sure that they see your brand. So that's one way that you can do that. And then another is going to be through paid search. So if they're on Google, on Google Maps, and they're searching for a cannabis store on the way home from work, boom, you want to make sure that you're top of mind there, and that you at least get in front of them when people are within a 3 mile radius of your store and they have the intent to purchase. So there's some really like hyper local campaigns that you can do there. And then on the SEO front, you can create landing pages for each neighborhood or zip code. So if there's a high net worth area that you really want to focus on, let's say Hillsborough in the Bay Area, if I want to target that location with delivery campaigns, let's say there's no retail stores around there, and we really want to to push delivery store, the delivery orders, then boom, we can target that same radius. So anyone that goes within that frame will see your ads. So there's a lot of great ways to do that. And then, one kind of easy way to do this that's not digital would be just guerrilla marketing. So any kind of like flyers or anything that you can do to really engage with the community on the local level is going to, it's going to really do well and really just get you that exposure in on those hyper local regions.
There's some stats around like customer service, and it's that when a customer has a really great experience, they tell on average 7 people, and when they have a really bad experience, they tell on average 10. So, cannabis, and because of the regulations and because of our willingness and our availability to advertise or market depending on the specific geography that we're in, it becomes so important to go out there and create like micro influencers. Who are the people that have the best shopping experience, and how do we get them to tell 7 people? If every one of our customers tells 7 people and we can convert 1 or 2 of them, we're going to be in a really great place from building a customer base. And this is how a customer base kind of like organically grows. So thinking about that also when you're thinking about like your loyalty programs or any kind of promotional efforts is how do we build that in as a strategy too, to ensure that we're reaching more people, is going to become one of the aspects that we can drive a more profitable business later on. So your touch points aren't only necessarily the ones that we physically have created or we've created digitally online, but your customers become a touch point as well. So anytime your customer is wearing your merchandise around a community, that's a touch point. Anytime that they are telling their friends or family members about the product or their experience at the store, it's a really good touch point. So thinking about that and integrating it into your touch point strategy is really helpful too.
Yeah, I know some of the loyalty programs have a like refer a friend program where, the person that refers you out as a retailer, they'll get a kickback, maybe like 10-20% off their next order if that's available in your location. So there's a lot of ways that you can really expand and amplify that, especially when you're getting that positive feedback.
Totally.
Krista, do you have an example of a marketing principle that also translates into physical retail?
Well, I think like the most of the marketing principles are going to play true in terms of physical retail.
Okay.
And there are certain things, obviously, because we're in a regulated space, that we're handcuffed in our ability to openly communicate without some type of restriction for our customers. The rule of 7 and kind of like what we're talking about with these like 7 touch points is really, really important in also what happens physically in store. And so this is actually how you translate a marketing strategy into a merchandising strategy, is like, if we are looking to build our basket size and add like products to our basket, then we need to also think about what are we doing from a touch point perspective in store to help drive that message home. So if our want or need is to, for example, add pre-rolls to our basket size because it gives an opportunity for the customer to test something, or it can be seasonal, or it's going to be great for our margin development of our transactions, then we need to think about, where does this pre-roll story show up 7 times in the environment? And like what we're trying to do then is make sure that our customers are catching this information and we're subtly pushing them towards that this is something that they want. Humans, like we talked about, are like habitual, and they like things that feel familiar, and they like to make sure that your customers want to feel like it was their idea. So whatever we can do to support them and making them feel like it was their idea, you're going to have a win every time. So that's kind of like why I love the strategy around using 7, because it gives us some rigor around how we're defining our story, what we're trying to communicate directly to our customers. Sorry, the phone. What we're trying to do to communicate directly with our customers, and then also push them in a direction that is going to support our margin development.
That's key. So really make sure that it feels like on the consumer side, make sure that they feel like they made the decision and that they're winning from this whole experience. And I think that's key. and making sure that you're top of mind. So remember that marketing rule of 7 by Dr. Jeffrey Lant. So now that we've covered your pre-opening marketing plan, let's focus on setting up and optimizing your in-store customer experience. So how we will move customers through the space and highlight products is key. So how important is a retail floor plan to you, Krista, and why?
I mean, the retail floor plan is going to give you the opportunity to create these touch points and define the way that the customer travels through the store. At the end of the day, profitability and transaction sizes are usually directly linked to what is happening in terms of the floor plan. Different floor plans are great for different businesses depending on what we're trying to achieve. So if we are trying to create repeat behavior where someone's coming in and out all the time, multiple times in a week, that might look different than where we're trying to capture a customer that's maybe a tourist. And so what type of products we need to support or push then. With a floor plan, and what we forget a lot about cannabis retail is actually that the store is a sales tool. So yeah, the store is for your customer and the in-store experience is really important. But the secondary piece of it is that the store is a sales tool for your bud tenders to be able to get product moving. And so we need to also analyze environments and floor plans on like how easily accessible is the floor plan going to be for our bud tenders and how can they use it to help guide the customer as well.
And how often should you shift your floor plan?
I mean, total changes in floor plan, it depends if there's been kind of like big market shifts. So for example, like when beverages came to the market or started to grow in terms of popularity in Canada, we did see some shifts that happened in floor plans because of that, to be able to accommodate for the change in the product format and how much space beverages took up. But I think one of the things that we miss is that we should be reassessing kind of like where the product is in the layout within the store and how it's showing up at least on a monthly and quarterly basis relative to our inventory levels. So the store is the tool to help us get the inventory out. So what is happening in our inventory? And then we want to relate that back to what's happening on our physical floor to be able to make some decisions around any changes we need to make.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I had a lot of conversations at MJ Unpacked about different floor plan layouts based on the actual, based on the strategies on how the stores want to manage the in-store experience versus online. And some of the partners that we're working with, they're getting 80% of their orders through e-commerce online. So they're really setting up their store to maximize or just minimize the amount of time to actually fulfill an order. So when someone shows up, they want to make sure that they can get out of there within 7 minutes. So that's a priority that they've taken on. How can retailers ensure that they're moving, product that may be tying up cash flow or nearing the expiration dates?
Yeah, I think like thinking about how many touch points it has in store is really valuable. Also, if we're running a promotion, does it have like the physical presence that goes with it? So many times I walk into an environment and like a bud tender is telling me all about a promotion, but it has no visibility anywhere. Yep. So we want to match it up, whether that be on a digital menu board or physical. It's really just like giving it as a reference point somewhere else. People learn information differently and consume information differently. And so some are audible, some are visual. And so if we can match and ensure that we've got touch points for both of those, it's going to help our customer better understand kind of like what is happening. So yeah, make sure that we've got both the bud tenders talking about it, as well as that it has some kind of physical presence in store too.
Yeah, 100%. And let's definitely discuss the in-store experience as well. Like your store is open, you have customers walking through the door. There's so much more to retail store than just putting products on the shelves. When you walk into a retail store, like what are the first things that you analyze or the top 3 questions that you ask bud tenders, Krista?
One of the first things that I'm going to look at when I walk into a store is where's the cash desk. I kind of like jump all the way to the front, mainly because it's a bit of a trend and a pattern to position the cash desk in a place in store that doesn't allow the customer to experience the whole store. So what do I mean by that? I mean that we have a tendency to put cash desks against the back wall. And so what we end up doing usually is creating almost like a highway of customers coming in and then walking back out. Well, meanwhile, we've invested a lot in terms of our physical space and potentially have fixtures. And so what we want to better understand is how we can get the customer all the way through the store. So I'm going to first take a look at like, where's the cash desk? And your customer is too, which is funny. Then I'm going to take a look at and try and understand and assess like what and how many options are being presented to our customer at any given time. We kind of touched on it earlier, but we're often creating environments that result in decision paralysis. So we have so many options, we don't know which one to pick. And so we just go with something that like feels familiar to us. So we can do a lot in our physical environments if we actually dial back our options and present less information to our customer. By doing that, we create more confidence in the decision making. We can still enable like assortment variety by seasonally changing product or making sure that we're kind of like always changing what is available, but presenting it in smaller, more digestible pieces, which is going to be specific to your customer and your environment. So like we probably don't want to present flower as a category only in a section of 5, but we might want to break out our flower as a category into subcategories and present it to our customer in groupings of like 3 to 5 so that they can make a decision within that. So really we're like helping them, guide them through the decision tree to a purchasing decision.
Yeah. And where do most retailers fall short, on the in-store customer experience?
Usually around impulse shopping. Okay. Impulse can be incredibly impactful for your bottom line in terms of growing your gross margin, as well as the number of units that you're selling to a customer. So in traditional retail, with fashion apparel specifically, it is kind of known that if we can get our customer to purchase 3 products, they are 70% more likely to shop with us again. And so we don't really have enough data in the cannabis industry to like fully tell whether this is true, but we know that the larger amount that a customer has spent, the more likely they are to stay loyal to you. And so building basket sizes and thinking about the number of units per transaction can help us in retaining that customer. And a lot of the time that additional 1 or 2 products at impulse is going to make that difference. So impulse shopping. So what do we do with impulse shopping? It means presenting product at the cash desk that is easily understood. So it doesn't take any explanation, and usually fits within a certain price band. So we want to understand what our pricing sensitivity is of our customers. In some locations that might be up to $15, in others it might be up to $25. And then we can present things that are easily understood and it doesn't take a long time to make a decision purchase. So edibles, pre-rolls are great. Beverages are great for impulse shopping, as well as accessories like papers and lighters and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and we saw, a lot of the top retail stores do this, like CVS, Walgreens, like they all have a huge assortment of products that are available at the checkout, really for that impulse shopper. So
yeah,
as you said, if we can get people to buy 3 products, then they're going to be more likely to shop with us. So really prioritize that, and it's something that I really, in a lot of stores, I see them dropping the ball on that on the impulse shopping.
Yeah, even like retailers that are kind of like non-CPG do a really great job of this. Mm-hmm. So Lululemon is a great example. Yep. In terms of like that in-store customer experience. Usually when you're shopping or checking out with Apple, they'll position you so that you can see the accessories in the background of the view, which is like a very subtle customer behavior, where they'll get you into a spot and position that you're facing them, and behind them is the accessory wall. There's a reason for that. And it's because accessories in an Apple store are the impulse products compared to the price point of the products that's in store. So it's really about thinking about where we can add those additional products that usually are high gross margin products as well.
Yeah, and then in our we did talk about really getting that customer feedback. So if you in store, there's different ways that you can maximize that. So, creating QR codes that you can put at the checkout to encourage Google reviews is going to be a easy, free way for you to really improve your just feedback on Google as a whole. And that's going to help with your SEO and discoverability on that search engine as well. So
yeah, the ask from the bud tender too. Like if we've
Yeah.
created a relationship with the customer, it's a great time. It's up to the bud tender to like obviously understand and embody that moment. But like if there's something positive that's happening there, and ask from them will get you a long way. So being able to kind of like create multiple touch points around QR codes and leaving reviews translates both to having bud tenders talk about it as well as having physical presence of it.
Yeah, and it doesn't stop. Once the customer is purchased and left the store, stats show that businesses who focus on customer experience create loyal shoppers, right? And loyal shoppers have a high customer lifetime value, which increases your revenue in the long run. So once the customer has made that purchase and left the store, the goal is to create as many loyal customers as possible. So you want to evaluate your point of sale data, as everything that we covered in this webinar, what SKUs are selling well, what product assortment is selling, was there customer feedback from bud tenders, think about revisiting training for those bud tenders as well. And as far as marketing tactics, we definitely don't want to forget about the customers that, after they've left the store. So loyalty programs is going to be key, right? So email programs with, different specials or SMS campaigns to really maximize the spend for those loyalty subscribers, offering deals, different promotional events. And there is an automation with some of these CRMs where someone can visit the store, and then 10 minutes after their visit, they'll get a text message on, how was your experience in the store? Can you give us your feedback on Google? Boom, there's an easy way to get Google reviews for your business. And then on the paid search and display advertising side, you can do retargeting, for people who know your store, and you want to make sure that even after the customers come in your store, that you want to continue to push that rule of 7, so that people, that you're top of mind, and that you really are there when people think about purchasing a new product. Krista, like on the data side, like what data should retailers be collecting and analyzing to calculate the customer lifetime value?
I mean, first step is to definitely understand what the lifetime value is. So meaning like, what is the value of our customer over, I like to use a year. So over a year, like how much are they spending? What are their visits look like? All of that. To be able to even do that, we need to start by creating accounts. So whether you're opening today and you have a loyalty program in your future, it's like, what are we doing today to make sure that we're tracking our individual customer behavior? So can we link everything back to either an email or a phone number? So creating an account first. Then we're going to want to take a look at and track the spend and the way that the customer is purchasing. So from a frequency perspective, and also what they're purchasing. So do they usually purchase flower first? Are they purchasing pre-rolls first? Like what's the entry product? And then how does that blow out and expand? Based off of that, then we can take a look at and start to actually forecast. So that's the really cool part about building a customer base, is we can start to say like, are we on track? For example, we just opened up, we're growing our customer base 20% month over month. And based off of that, and based off of maybe using the scale that we see 8 visits a year and what they're usually spending, we can start to anticipate what revenue looks like. We then know if we're on track or not. If we don't have the historical data around like how many times our customers actually purchasing, this is like a really great way to start to understand if we are going to get there, and or if we're missing moments. So if we've added a bunch of customers and we're not seeing them repurchase in a 2-month period, we've probably got something that we want to address. It's going to tell us about our customer experience faster. It's going to tell us about if we need to be doing any kind of promotions, or if there's something from like a customer service, like true kind of like bud tender to in-store perspective that we need to address. Similar to kind of like this revenue piece with our inventory, usually 30% of your customers are going to generate 70% of your overall revenue. So it's understanding and really making sure that we are like taking care of that group. The other group is really important as well. I don't want to downplay your customers that are not generating that majority of revenue, but I will say like these are your promoters. So these are going to be the people that are going to help you to build a customer base in your community. Understanding who's like kind of on the cusp becomes like where some of your biggest opportunities are. So in analyzing your customer lifetime value, we want to take a look at like how frequently people are purchasing and how much they're spending, and then also what types of products they are buying. This is going to help us because we can use that in our loyalty programs in terms of what cadence we should be reaching out to them, what types of products we should be promoting, when we should be identifying somebody that's like dropped off and maybe cut communication, or when we should be amplifying communication further.
Yeah. So we really want to track that account first, and then track the spend and do all we can to maximize that customer experience. Kind of separate from that, what is, I have a couple last questions since we only have a few minutes left.
Rapid fire them?
What's that? Yeah. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them now, and we'll answer them before we log off here. But like, what is heat mapping, and how can dispensaries use this to improve their customer engagement?
Yeah, heat mapping is maybe one of the best kept secrets that nobody's using, because we have security systems in stores that are often using heat as a sensor as opposed to vibration, which used to be the old way of doing security systems. We actually have data around where the heat is in the store as long as your cameras are on. So we can actually heat map out and take a look at a floor plan, and then utilize your security footage to understand where customers are going. This is going to tell us a lot about where our touch points need to be, as well as where there are probably really valuable places in the store, or if we are missing big opportunities and want to push customers in a certain direction, what we need to do to get them there.
Awesome. And then before we sign off, I want to hear your story about how a dispensary used its proximity to a dog park to shift its retail strategy.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. It's like understanding and being super niche about who your customer is often like a long-term winning strategy. Mm-hmm. And so there's this group that their entire strategy is to be close to dog parks. And it's because they really understand the customer purchasing behavior. So they opened their first location. It was right near a dog park. And what they noticed was that it influenced what types of products were selling and when their customer was shopping, and what their mood set was even when they were coming into the store. And they were like, I think we can replicate this. And by doing this, we can scale our business easier because we're going to see similar patterns in terms of what we need from an inventory and assortment, and what we need to think about with where our customer is coming before, during, and after a store visit. And so it will make it easier for us to create some brand consistency. So then they opened a second one and it panned true. And then they opened a third and it also panned true. And so they really were like, okay, let's understand who our customer is and pick a location specific for them. And then make sure that we are nuancing the environment for like the inventory and the people that work there to be able to support the needs of the customer that are coming in store.
I love that. It's a unique strategy, and there's different ways that people can apply that same strategy just depending on where they are in the city, or based on who their customers are. And this has all been very, very insightful. Krista, thank you for joining us today and really sharing all your knowledge on how to manage the customer experience before, during, and after the visit. Where can people find you and learn more about Vetrina Group and what you do?
Yeah, you can find us online on our website. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. We like to share a lot of kind of quick tips and tricks. And we are happy to kind of work through any questions around data and how to leverage your data in a retail environment to really push that profitability. But thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
This has been great. And I love the ability to think about a retail environment as well as the online and how they tie together.
Likewise. And thank you again for sharing all your insights. And thank you to our audience for joining as well. Whether you're logging in through Zoom or through LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll catch you next week.